Hello again. I will present today's work differently. First, by sharing the work itself, and then my process and analysis. I explored 3 different directions. Choosing an image for this project was challenging. And as you can tell, I started with several. This was the first one I began with because it's seemingly abstract. I initially focused on finding my text based on the factual aspects of the photograph: title, date, location, label, explanation, and footnotes. And then took that text to the computer. I went through dozens of rounds of placement of text, copying and pasting and placing over and over again, which probably defeated the purpose of the assignment. I tried leaning into a default strategy with my automatic text choice and placement on the page. Everything I did felt clinical, like I was trying to identify aspects of the photograph from a technical standpoint. It finally occurred to me to try and mimic the placement of the wood chips in the photo. The text began to have a personality. I worked this way for about 2 hours before I realized this might be more enjoyable if I worked by hand. Cutting out text by hand would also encourage me to edit and be intentional about what I wanted to say. Around this time in my process, Sarah and I had a Zoom call where we shared our respective work. She had some great insights and feedback about where I was. She mentioned the scale of the wood chip photo, which shows a 30-foot tall mountain, was impressive. How could I draw attention to this with the text? I still wanted to work by hand, so I printed out a few words in multiple sizes, styles, and weights to work with. Working by hand slowed me down. Having to determine the placement of each letter, the photo became a conversation between the words themselves. Each placement of the former word determined the next action, placement, and meaning. This placement style was an accident. I wanted to try and change the style and size of the text to appear like I was labeling, but I tried to reposition the tape and part of the ink came off with it. I decided to go with it, but I recognized this feature changed the style of the image. I still continued exploring on this image, continuing in the same tone. At this point, I ran into technical printer issues, so I decided to pause on the wood chip image and explore a different direction Sarah and I had discussed on our Zoom. Out of the 5 I initially selected, the other images she found interesting were 2 images of Carnegie libraries. For those who don't know, a Carnegie Library is a library built with money donated by Scottish American businessman Andrew Carnegie. The United States constructed a total of 1,689 libraries between 1883 and 1929. Though the number of styles varies, the original building design was consistent. Simple and traditional architecture, welcoming patrons to enter through a central doorway, nearly always accessed via a staircase from the ground level. The entry staircase symbolized a person's elevation by learning. Similarly, libraries had a lamppost or a lantern installed near the entrance as a symbol of enlightenment. I've seen over 40 libraries in 2 states and have taken pictures of 30. Some remain libraries, while others have become art buildings, public radio stations, breweries, and, in the case of Mill Valley, a private residence. I decided to start simple, applying the knowledge I just explained to an image. Eventually, I took an animated approach to the text, trying to demonstrate elevation elevating. And enlightenment rising. This series still felt clinical to me. I could offer the viewer some insight into the history of the image, but one could still identify what was happening without my explanation. I wanted to try the opposite approach, starting with an abstract image and giving it context. With this last experiment, I again worked on the computer. I used an abstract image from a past project I did, Celica Portraits, which was a reimagination of car parts found at Pick and Pull. I tried to reference the prompt for this version closely. I began by labeling parts I could identify, keeping the label tiny, and applying them directly to their object. Next, I started describing what different objects reminded me of, calling them out in a larger label. Finally, I ended by placing 2 verbs in larger sizes that would cover, or at least touch, the other elements I had crafted. The end composition feels like a story of the end of the car, detailing how it came to be at Pick and Pull. Overall, this assignment was a challenging one for me. I overthought in the beginning, but toward the end, with the car exploration, I feel like I could experiment with tone and pacing and let the image tell me its story as we worked together. As always, thank you for watching, and any feedback is appreciated.